Hi, thank you very much for joining me. In today's video, we're going to go over the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020. As we have seen throughout the administration of the CARES Act, along with the PPP, the EIDL grant, now known as an advance, the EIDL loan, everything that came through in the CARES Act is subject to change, really at any point in time. The Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020 introduced significant changes this week in terms of how it is we're going to administer and how it is we're going to apply for forgiveness for the PPP loan. We've spent this week really analyzing the act to ensure that we're able to start digging in and strategizing with you on how we take advantage of these changes. In today's video, we are going to briefly touch on the very large moving blocks that this affects, and in future videos we'll then be breaking those down to talk more strategically about their implementation. So there's been a change in the timeline, change in use considerations, a change in the full-time equivalency reduction, the PPP loan itself, an amount that would not be forgiven, that has changed significantly. The deferral period has changed, and you're now able to participate in the delay of employer payroll taxes, which was an item that was covered elsewhere in the CARES Act, has not received a lot of attention because if you applied for PPP forgiveness, you would not, previous to this week, you would not have been able to participate. So I'll just touch on that briefly. So the change in the timeline. In our original CARES Act and the interim rulings that we've received so far, the covered period in which you could obtain a PPP loan was from February 15th of 2020 until June 30th of 2020. That now has been expanded from February 15th of 2020 all the way through the end of the year, December 31st of 2020. We had 8 weeks to spend the dollars if we were going to have those dollars forgiven. We now have 24 weeks, a substantially longer period of time for us to utilize those PPP funds and for us to receive forgiveness. There's change in the use considerations. So previously, the amount forgiven had to be at least 75% towards payroll cost. That's now been changed, and the way the law states it is the amount of a covered loan. So the entire amount of the PPP loan, 60% would need to go to payroll cost. That has been an issue that legislators have talked about, that they intended that to be for the forgiveness amount. Right now, all we have is the letter of the law with no interim rulings. So as of the date of recording this, the amount of the covered loan needs to be 60% to payroll cost. One application of that, remember we had a $100,000 cap per individual for a forgiveness amount. Over 8 weeks, that $100,000 cash compensation cap worked out to be a little bit over $15,000. Now with 24 weeks, that $100,000 cap works out to be $46,145. Significant change there. We also have a change in the full-time equivalency reduction. So all of the rules that we talked about with FTE, the introduction of an exception to the FTE reduction of your forgiveness amount based off of offering jobs back, that's now been broadened. And that safe harbor that we had, which was June 30th, has now been extended. So there is an exception if you are unable to rehire the same individual, and just as broad as that, that was there before February 15th. There is an exception if you are unable to hire the same qualified employees. And there is an exception if there is a decrease in business activity due to compliance requirements. Broad exceptions now in that FTE requirement. And as I mentioned, that safe harbor, that amount that we can get our FTE back up to or document the inability to do that, previously was June 30th, and we were doing a lot of strategy with practices opening back up around that date. Now it's December 31st of 2020. So if your practice is not up and running now, do not feel a need to go and rehire very quickly. Allow the expanded unemployment to help with your staff, be in good communication with them, and use that long extended period with the PPP loan to onboard and ramp back up again. Now, for the amount that isn't forgiven, that would be transferred into a loan. Previously, 1%, 2-year term in a deferral period of not less than 6 months, not more than 12 months. There was no comment in the PPP Flexibility Act of 2020 concerning that interest rate. So we hope and anticipate that will remain at 1%. Now the term though, that is extended to not less than 5 years, not more than 10 years, and it's codified that that's going to be an agreement between the borrower and the lender. Last time the CARES Act specified not more than 10 years, and in interim final rulings is where we got that 2-year. So they should not be able to change that range again, and you can work with your lender on when you'd want to pay that back or how quickly you'd want to pay that back. The deferral period, now that we've extended that covered period so significantly, the deferral on your loan is until the date of forgiveness is remitted to the lender, so until the SBA funds your lender, or if you don't seek forgiveness, 10 months after the end of the covered period. So that works out to be October of 2021. And then the last piece that is kind of part of these big rocks that I want you to be aware of is in the CARES Act, there was a provision that you could delay your employer payroll taxes for the remainder of 2020. 50% of them would be due by the end of 2021. 50% of it, the remaining 50%, would be due by the end of 2022. However, if you sought forgiveness for the PPP program, you could not participate in that delay of payment. The Flexibility Act of 2020 now makes it available for individuals who receive the PPP loan and individuals who have an amount or pursue a forgiveness amount of that PPP loan. So you now can participate in it. So employers, you are permitted to defer your 2020 payroll taxes. Again, 50% due 2021, 50% due by the end of 2022. If you're a self-employed individual, the amount that goes from the corporation, so 50% of your own payroll taxes can apply to this deferral. Some look at it as an interest-free loan from the federal government. Others look at it as just deferring liabilities that we're already incurring and don't want to participate in it. I just want you to know you have the option. Those are the big rocks. As I mentioned, we're going to go through and in future videos break these apart. We now have a significant amount of time for us to be able to schedule and design your practices getting back up to speed around this elongated PPP timeframe. So I think that there's some real good strategy we'll be able to introduce you to and share in future videos. Wanted to give you a brief overview in this week's video, so I really appreciate you keeping an eye on it. As always, please send us your questions. You've got my email address, you've got my phone number, and feel free to just post any questions you have in a comment and we will make sure to address them. Hope everybody out there is staying safe and healthy, enjoying your summer, and hopefully practices are starting to see patients again and we're starting to feel a little bit back to normal. If you've got any questions, please contact your advisors, please contact me. Thank you very much.